Good morning, welcome back. It is Wednesday. Hope everyone is doing well out there. Excuse me. Sunday, went to a couple flea markets. Second one I went to kind of struck out. There was a booth that did have some really good prices on some Nascar diecast, but there wasn't anything that I needed to bring home with me. But the first one got some pretty cool stuff, so we'll show you that here real quick. We're going to start with some racing programs and magazines. First one is from 2001, the Indianapolis 500 program. And you see it's got one of those sport flick / speed flick motion type. And it makes that sound when you rub your fingernail across it. And it's got footage of the first and it was what was probably the 2000 Indy 500. Very cool. There's a term for this type of material, and I cannot think of it for the life of me. But, you know, obviously, typical program, got driver profiles, history, track maps, all sorts of fun stuff, driver bios. So always like the getting the programs for that reason. They are definitely great research, you know, sometime down the road, maybe when I quit working and actually have days where I can read these things, I'll learn a whole lot. Our next one is another Indy 500 program. This one is from 2014, and actually to me it's quite dull looking. There's not really a lot of creativity, but like all programs, again, loaded up with ads. Looks like we got a little NASCAR information there, some 500 timelines, again, more driver profiles, histories, more ads, more ads, more ads. And then this was in there as well. I'm not sure exactly what this is. It's printed on what appears to be card stock, like a photographic stock or whatever, but it's one of the turbine cars. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm going to set that off to the side and put that with the rest of my oddball stuff. Then our next one is a program from 1980. Here you see that iconic Pontiac Trans Am. Got the field from 79. Big old Valvoline with the big tin cans on the back that you had to puncture the holes in. And again, much like the other programs, just a lot of information. Driver profiles aren't as thorough. So just how they did it back then. Looks like it still has the poster intact. Very cool. Of course, 1980, Johnny Rutherford won in that Pennzoil Chaparral. Tim Richmond was Rookie of the Year. So this would be a cool program to hold on to. And then our final book was not a program. It is, but it isn't. It's from 1995, and it's the Winston Cup Preview from Goodies. And so it's just got a lot of, it's just really pictures. It's just got pictures of drivers, pictures of cars. And I was thumbing through it, and then I got to here, and somebody ripped out one of these pages here. And I want to say that's probably Mark Martin that they ripped out. So a little sad that it is missing a page. But it was by Griggs Publishing, which also did NASCAR Scene, paper, magazine, a few other things. So super cool on that. Now, before we get to the NASCAR diecast, I picked this up. I seen this in just a random booth. And we're familiar with like the Walgreens Fairfield repack boxes and the other ones done by other companies, MJ Holdings, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to do a video on this one here probably in the next week or so. But back in the mid-2000s and early 2010s, Dick's Sporting Goods had repack boxes. So it's collector's sports card pack. And there you see a Peyton Manning card, bonus Manning card. And then on the back, there's a 2006 Topps Total Football. And you can see this one, the second pack is 2005 Upper Deck. And there you see they were $5.99 was the SRP at Dick's Sporting Goods. So they used to keep these up by the register. And I remember buying a couple of them way back when. But they had football, baseball, basketball. They may have had soccer. They may have had racing. I don't really recall. Nonetheless, cool find. I did not pay $5.99 for it. I can tell you that right now. So I paid well below that. So let's get to our die cast. So we're going to start off first. And I've bought one of these before, but they had a good price on it. But the Mark Martin, Jeff Gordon, Carolina Ford Dealers, Bill Davis Racing. So Jeff ran this car in 91. Martin ran this car in 89 and 90. Slightly different paint schemes, but both had the Carolina Ford Dealers. Of course, there was one race at Richmond. Gordon ran this paint scheme, but it had Autolite branding. That was the night Richmond race. Then they had a few of these from Action. So this is it's a Darrell Waltrip. Now I'm kind of concerned that this is Winston Cup collectible, but it has a short track car in it. But they all had short track cars, so nonetheless, still a cool Darrell Waltrip Camaro from his Pepsi days. And there you see the Pepsi car down there, the Bud car, the Tide, the Mountain Dew, and the Gatorade. Then they also had the Darrell Waltrip Tide Camaro. So I thought that was pretty cool. And again, it has the same card in it. So I think they just had the short track cars made up of each of his sponsors. Because I remember when these first come out, because I actually bought this one when it came out, but I seen this one again. So I went ahead and got it. I know of a couple friends that might have a little interest in it, but it's an Alan Kwiecki ASA Xerox car that he ran a few times. Sure, his Cup schedule didn't allow for him to run a whole lot. And I picked this one up. Again, got it for a pretty decent price. And I seen this, and the condition is amazing. From pretty sure it's 1998. But the WCW Nitro Street Rods, Steve McMichael. And if you know, Steve McMichael's in bad health right now. I would have bought this regardless of his health condition. But I seen this, and it was like, okay, I have to get this. It's got his likeness there on the roof. Looks like it's got the WCW. I can't tell if that's the Four Horsemen logo there on the back, or if it says, no, it looks like it says Starcade. And then 76, his number there on the scoop. Of course, he had his Bears jacket. And then on the back of it, just a little information there. It talks about Sting and the now defunct WCW website. These last two die-cast, I know I've picked the first one up. The second one I can't remember, but went ahead and picked it up anyway. So the first one is strange because it's from 91 Racing Champions, and it's unpunched, so that's cool. But the car is from 1988, and that would be Sterling Marlin. Because by this time, he had already left the Hagen team and went to Junior Johnson's driving the Maxwell House car. In fact, he had already changed numbers and sponsors at the Hagen team. They went from 44 to 94 with Sunoco branding. But there you see the name, the Piedmont Airlines. Underalls was one of their associate sponsors, so that always got a giggle out of people. But I always liked this paint scheme. I thought this was a pretty cool paint scheme for the time. And it makes me wonder, too, going back to this, I was doing some research, because if you remember a year or so ago, I did a history of Folgers in NASCAR video, and somebody had suggested maybe doing Piedmont. So I was going through and looking up some different stuff. And it was about this time that Piedmont, the regional airline, was acquired by US Air. And these are very similar colors to what US Air had at the time. So I don't know if that paint scheme had to do with the rebranding, and maybe if they were going to go the following year, change to US Air, and then US Air said no, and, you know, terminated the contract. I don't know all that. But yeah, US Air was eventually bought out by somebody else. And our final diecast, final flea market find of the day, from 1994, in memory of Clifford Allison. So this would have been a Busch Series car that he ran. Actually, this was an ARCA car that he ran for his father, Bobby. So Sports Image, one of the marketing companies at that time. that really helped people like Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, and so on get their likeness and image, and keep everything branded. Got their own brand rolling. If you don't know about Clifford Allison, he was killed in Busch Series practice in 1992 at Michigan Speedway, driving a number 9 car owned by Barry Owen. And he had been getting progressively better with that team, starting to finish more in the top half of the field, maybe top 15, top 18 or so. Still gaining experience. And he was kind of like, some of the other brothers that didn't follow directly in their older brothers' footsteps and use them as a springboard. So Clifford was marching his own path. He was going through the Busch Series. Well, at Michigan, I'm not exactly sure what happened. I was there that day. We actually have a picture of the car coming off the wall that my dad had taken. I believe he blew a right front tire, and kind of like Ernie Irvan and some of the other ones, went nearly head-on the wall, at least from my recollection. And the place went silent. There wasn't a lot of people there. It was a Friday morning, Thursday morning. Not a lot of people there for Busch Series practice. But there was a person with a scanner near us that was listening to the one of the NASCAR channels. And I've read in Bobby's book some tales about Clifford's injuries and so forth, and it was a bad accident. But there's a guy sitting next to us that had a scanner, and he was listening to one of the NASCAR frequencies, and they had called for a helicopter to come from, I believe, Jackson, maybe Ypsilanti, one of the bigger cities around that had like a trauma center. And shortly after, they called the helicopter, and apparently they called the helicopter off because they knew at that point that they had lost Clifford. So it just was a somber weekend. It was kind of overcast most of the weekend, so it kind of fit the mood, so to speak. But yeah, it's very tragic because it was the first weekend that the Busch Series cars were racing at Michigan. Not a really great way to christen your inaugural event. Now, Clifford was the second person to die in a Busch Series race, but the first because of injury. If you go back to 1991, it was either Hickory or South Boston. Gary Neese was killed in a crash, but he didn't die as a result of his injuries. He had a massive heart attack. So there's always an asterisk by his, but it was still a racing accident. So anyway, hate to close on such a sad note, but had some good time finding this stuff this weekend. A lot of nice, still got a lot of nice stuff over there that I need to go back and look at again. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and make sure you come back at noon for Fast Packs.